You know by that tune that it's time for the MLB Baseball Scout Podcast, and it is great to have all you guys here with us. Episode 14 of the show that started the Cubs Baseball Channel, former Cubs scouting director Tim Wilken, and I'm Mick Gillispie, and the World Series is set, my friend. Could you have ever imagined your old team that you just left, the Diamondbacks, would win that very difficult National League through the Braves and the Phillies and the Dodgers and the Padres and all those money teams, and they would get to the World Series to take on the Rangers? How crazy is that?
I don't think I'd put any money on that in Vegas last March, but here we are, and pretty exciting times for them, and also the Texas Rangers. You know, both clubs has been stated before that both of those clubs were 100-loss teams 2 years ago.
Right.
So they've redirected themselves pretty good in a 2-year period.
Now, when did you last work there? And, you know, how much of this was kind of in place when you were there?
Most of it, it was gathering steam, and there've been some, I think probably I got to see 8 or 9 of those guys that were drafted. You know, I never would have dreamed in my mind that it would come this quick. And they've done a hell of a job with the bullpen here in the last 2 months, month and a half. And I think that's been the key to their success. They're, you know, they swing the bats decent, but sometimes they can go silent. But that bullpen is really strengthened up. And it surprised me because there was a lot of long nights beginning of the year and last year where we couldn't close anything up at that time. So
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Very, very interesting. And boy, they put it together at the right time, as everyone can see. And, you know, they got just as good a shot as Texas. And this will be a really interesting series.
I'm with you. I did not see this coming. Now, I knew that the Diamondbacks would be a tough out. Corbin Carroll at the top of the lineup is becoming one of the premier players in the game. He does it with speed. He gets on base. Really good, really, really good young player. But it's the Zach Gallons and the top of that. The top 3 in that rotation are so good, and they've just gotten better and better. And the Diamondbacks are an organization that wins in the minor leagues. I think that's helped them. I mean, they were showing clips of Platt throwing last year in the championship for AAA, and now he's pitching in the NLCS. And I think you get prepared by doing those things.
Yeah, his climb to the big leagues is quite something else. He went to Division II, Bellarmine University in Louisville. I believe now they're Division I, but I think when he was at the school, Brandon Fott was he was at it was a Division II at the time, and I got to see him in Cape Cod prior to his draft year in 2020, and he was that year it was the COVID draft. They only had 5 rounds. And Brandon was taken in the 5th round. But the interesting thing on this, and I don't have total verification on it, but I can say that they were down to X amount of dollars with their 5th pick, because the 4th pick, they took a infielder from Wisconsin, high school guy named A.J. Vukovich, and very good player, but they spent quite a bit of money. So they were trying to do a deal. They only had X amount of money, somewhere in, I think, the neighborhood of 100 to 150,000. And the first, some people will say it was 5. I've also heard up to 15 players that they tried to see if they could strike a deal in that 5th round. No one took it until Brandon Pfaadt took it. At least the 6th person, or it could have been the 16th.
Mm-hmm.
If it depends who you're listening to, but
Yeah.
I mean, he was an after the thought kind of guy, and had a real good arm. He showed it up in the Cape, and you can see his stuff is upper echelon right now, and he's on a pretty good playoff role. And who would have thought it going in there, because he had been up once, sent him back, kind of got roughed up quite a bit, and maybe he learned from it and was able to calm his nerves and get more consistent with his delivery. And that slider is probably upper third in the major leagues.
Yeah. And the more I saw him, he pitched against the Cubs a couple of times, and his numbers weren't great. You know, he looked like a guy that you should be able to beat, but you could see him turning the corner as far as experience in the major leagues and starting to figure things out. And the Cubs had trouble with him, and, you know, they beat the Cubs a lot. And that's kind of how they remember they were in a dogfight with the Cubs for that wild card spot, and they ended up winning it. And it really came down to pitching and timely hitting, and they did that. And he was a big factor in it, you know. So, and then he's pitched, you know, a couple really big games in this postseason.
Oh,
they're going to be a tough out. I mean, they are going to be a tough out. Did you scout all of these guys when you were with Arizona, the Corbin Carrolls and the Zach Gallons and stuff?
Gallen was a trade from the Marlins he went to the University of North Carolina. I did see him, but the guys I did see were Corbin Carroll, Alec Thomas, the center fielder. He was a high school player out of the Chicago area. His father I believe, was strength coordinator for the Chicago Bears. And
so he's strong.
Yeah. And both him and Carroll belie their size, and they're pretty strong lads. So got to see a few others. Nelson, the right-handed reliever out of Oregon University, got to see him. Got to see Saul Frank, the left-handed reliever out of the University of Indiana. And there's a few other guys I did get to see that were drafted, Pavin Smith being another one out of University of Virginia. So I would have never dreamed this. You asked me that question earlier, but I just think it's a tribute to what they picked up prior to the trade deadline with their relief, and that has really come to play here in the last week, especially against the Phillies, but pretty darn strong throughout the playoffs.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, really seeing a young team like this emerge in the National League is great, but at the same time, it also is concerning to me with the new playoff format. I got to be honest. I mean, the regular season has to have a value. One of my biggest problems with the NFL, Tim, is that you play all of these games, and then everybody that has like a 500 or above record, you're in it like 9-7. I guess it would be like 10-7. Now they added that extra game, or 9-8. And then you win the Super Bowl. But what about the team that went like 15-2? I mean, where's the reward there? And baseball has always had the toughest postseason because of the fact that it was so hard to get into. When you were a kid, it was like the first team and the second team, and they played in the, I'm sure in the World Series, depending on how far you go back. Then they added 2 teams, right? And then they added like 4 teams, and now it's like, with the wild card, everybody's got a chance. And I guess in a way that's great, but this part of it is what's not great is when Atlanta's sitting at home and the Dodgers are sitting at home, they won 100 games. Baltimore's sitting at home, they won 100 games, and I wondered to myself, and I know a lot of people have talked about this, was this the intention? Like, hey, who cares about the regular season? We just want to see, what, like crazy runs. And why? Is it because the teams that won all those games had to sit out and the other teams kind of had those extra days to get on a roll? What do you think?
Well, one of the things I've noticed, I think injuries are on the incline big time. And the structure of those clubs, some of them early in the year, namely Arizona, they don't get off to a particularly good start. And I think injuries, especially with lack of overall depth, I think it's hard to make up early. And you see Arizona was, 6 games above 500 for the year, I believe. I think they were 84 and 78.
Right there.
And anyways, I think it rewards clubs that had a pretty good base of a club. Their spring training and prior to spring training during the winter meetings and the trade times, where clubs got their clubs, got what they wanted. And then all of a sudden injuries start appearing. They get off to a rough start. And I'm wondering if that's kind of reverse value to say, but I kind of think maybe that first round of playoffs you might be able to do without. So I don't know how many clubs you would have to pull out to do that.
Right.
But yeah, what do we have? We had 14. Was it 14 teams?
Yeah, and I didn't mind it when it was a 1-game playoff. It was like a 1-game wild card matchup. Like when the Cubs played the Pirates and, the Arrieta diced them up. And I think Schwartz hit a home run in the game. It was great. 1 game. Cubs lost to the Rockies. 1 game. Then you go and play the next round. But because you're playing 3 games in the first round, that means the other teams are sitting out. And what happens is if you got a really good team, you're already kind of dialing it back towards the end of the season anyway, if you're smart, to rest your bullpen and to get your backups in so that if you need them in the playoffs, they're ready to go. You don't want guys getting tired, you want those guys, the backup guys, to get as much time on the field, right, Tim? So that when you get into the postseason, if you need them, they haven't been, on the bench for a month. They're ready to go, whether it's to bunt or to pinch hit or, get out in the field. And then all of a sudden now you got another 3 days. Oh, and then there's another day for travel. And then who knows with the TV. So, you may be 5 days off, 6 days off, with the way that the season ends and you have the date at the end of the season. So there's just too many off days for me. And I almost feel like this, like I don't necessarily believe we have to have a 162 game schedule. Like mix in more off days and make it 154 like it used to be. I'd be fine with that. Start the playoffs earlier, but I still just don't like the week off that the best teams are having because all of them are out. And it tells you something.
Well, timing with ball players is needed very much by, I'd say, at least 80% of the players. And you kind of lose that timing being off for 5 days. And the only thing I can see that might have some value is that they can really set up their pitching for the following series when they see who they're going to be playing. And the other thing that I can't remember during my time, but we've got Texas and Arizona, and both of them won 2 road games to finish it up to get to the World Series. And I don't think I've ever seen that in my lifetime.
Yeah, no, I don't either. I'll tell you what, the Phillies series to me came down to Craig Kimbrell's inability to get games closed out in Arizona. And those 2 games that they lost flipped the momentum in the series. And then after that, all of a sudden, all of those runs that they were scoring with Bryce Harper and Nick Castellanos and all those guys, they dried up. and they obviously lost, right, because of that. And then in Arizona took advantage. I mean, I honestly wish the Cubs would work on this more in the minor leagues, the ability to win games playing small ball, because that's why the Diamondbacks are in there. They got a guy on, they bunt him over and they knock him in. They get a guy on, they steal second base and they knock him in. Like, it wasn't power like we saw with the Phillies, except, off of Kimbrel in the games, the 1-3 run homer that they hit. But it was just playing small ball. Like, and when you get into those games where it's tough to score and it's great pitching, the likelihood that you can win with a single is a lot higher than the likelihood that you're going to hit a home run. But it feels like the game these days, we reward guys and think that the only way that you can win is with a home run. And what the Diamondbacks have done is that they've kind of like taken it back to the basics of baseball, and they're just rubbing it in everybody's face. Here's how we're doing it. And they win, and they won, and they knocked off a Goliath, because I think the Phillies were the best team. They were the hottest team in baseball going into the postseason. Forget about what the record was. And the Diamondbacks withstood their punch and won the game because of small ball to me.
They play real fundamental baseball for the most part. I saw a throw by Carroll, kind of went errant early, but most of the time their throws are on line. The infielders can cut those balls if they have to, or they can let it go if they want to. They're pretty fundamentally sound for the most part. And those three outfielders as a trio might have as much range as anyone in baseball. And Alex Thomas is going to be a Gold Glover if he gets to play every day and starts improving with his bat. We're starting to see some signs of that. He's got a chance to be a Gold Glover, and that's why Corbin Carroll's playing right field. Carroll's got makeup speed, plus the plus range, but his breaks are nowhere near what Alex Thomas is, and that's why Alex Thomas is playing center, and there's a lot of people that have questioned it. But if you look at Alex Thomas, he is fundamentally sound, solid infield. They can catch the ball. Got the catcher from the Blue Jays here in the offseason, which has really helped them. And, they've got it going pretty good. Probably the only negative thing might be their everyday players coming off the bench. I don't know if they're as good as maybe what Texas is, but it should be an exciting World Series, and I'm really looking forward to seeing it. Scouted a fair amount of guys on the Texas club, so it's going to be fun to watch starting tomorrow night, I guess.
Let's talk about the American League. We just got into the National League. You haven't been part of the scouting department over there up until a couple years ago. You know a lot about the Diamondbacks, and congratulations to them. I'm still kind of in shock. I didn't see this coming. Now, the Rangers in the same way, Tim, and that's not to take a shot at you or anybody else in Arizona. I mean, that's just, it's amazing. I'll say this, final thought on Arizona for me is that, I cover the Cubs. I watch the Cubs, and my biggest criticism with the Cubs right now is why aren't the players from the minor leagues performing the way that I know they can in the big leagues? And I don't want to get into that now. I want to talk about the Rangers, and I want to swing back to that conversation. But the one thing that I want to add, though, about the Diamondbacks is their young players are performing. So why is that? And just kind of keep that in mind. And then I'm going to talk Cubs and Yankees, two teams that would love to see some of their young talent get to the big leagues and contribute. But first, let's get into the Rangers. That's a teaser. So the first off, Dusty Baker retired. I'm so torn on Dusty Baker as a manager. When you were you with the Cubs when he was the manager? It'd been right before you got there. You were there with Lou.
I was mostly with Lou. I might have caught Dusty's last year as a Cub.
Great clubhouses. Everybody likes Dusty. But it always seems to end, except last year, like it did against the Rangers. Like it just, for whatever reason, and the Astros to me had a better team than the Rangers, but the Rangers had Bruce Bochy, who I think is the best manager in our lifetime. I'm just going to tell you that right now. I think he's the best manager. I think Tito was great. Joe Torre was great. Those guys got it done. Tito didn't matter where he went. I mean, the fact that he would go to the Angels and they'd trade his best players away and they'd still, push for the playoffs was amazing. But Bruce Bochy has something. And to get the Rangers, when they lost that game, Adolis Garcia hit by a pitch after he hit the home run. And then the Rangers absolutely stunned. The Rangers absolutely stunned by the Astros with the home run in the ninth inning. I'm going, these guys, I mean, what are they going to do? And then Garcia went on a tear that we have never seen before in the game of baseball. The entire history of baseball, I don't know that anyone's ever taken over a championship series like that guy did. It was unbelievable. He didn't even run on one of the balls. Then he just stole second on the next pitch, or two pitches later. So it didn't even matter that he was admiring his home run, which is why he got hit by a pitch. And they go on to beat the Astros to get to the World Series. Like, Bochy just has this, that you call manager a skipper, right? He just has this calming influence of a real skipper. And the last thing I'm going to say, Tim, before you jump in, I'm going to take tip of the cap to Gary Hughes, because I was hanging out with Gary at Don and Charlie's in Arizona with all of his Sarah high school friends, which is a big thing he used to do. The late, great Gary Hughes, our good friend. And Bruce Bochy was there. And so Gary introduces me to Boch. Great guy on top of it all. So Dusty's a great guy too. Met him too. Great guy. Bochy, great guy. Out of retirement. And now I think they're going to win the World Series. Maybe that's a kiss of death. What a series, though, for Garcia. Have you ever seen anything like that before?
I don't think any of us have. And, Altuve's was pretty good, but evidently it wasn't enough for Houston. But, no, and then Bally hit the left. I know he was kind of pimping it and it hits the wall. The left fielder got the ball back pretty quick. And he played defense just right there. And I don't know if he would have made it or not, but he should have been running a lot harder coming out of the box. But like you said, next pitch, he steals second base, and there's his double. So, no, he's been interesting. I mean, if you follow his history coming up through the minor leagues, he was DFA'd, he's basically released. And now he's putting together quite the year, and especially this time of year. And I don't know if he was American League Championship MVP, I believe. So, their club is interesting. I think their starters are better than their relievers. Although he's had some good luck and fortune with LeClaire here, and then you get Josh Spores. That's been setting up a lot better. Their years in the beginning were not that good, and as Bochy showed more confidence in those guys, I think they kind of blossomed here basically in the playoffs and in the championship series.
How about the all-Texas matchup, too? Baseball's becoming a big thing in Texas. There's been talk of adding an expansion team to Austin or San Antonio. And after watching this playoff series, I don't know that that's a bad idea. The South doesn't, to me, have enough teams anyway. And you want to put them where they get supported. Nashville, obviously, to me, is number one on the list of expansion places, but Charlotte, and then watching these two teams in Texas with the stadiums and the fan support and the excitement, I think that all it did was just make me realize that, with the dome, and I know it's hot there, you can, play baseball and be great to see the game expand into San Antonio, which has always been a great NBA city. Austin, which I don't know about Austin, but I know it's a cool place. Texas is becoming a baseball state.
Oh, it's the second largest state in the union. I mean, California's got, well, they may not have as many now with Oakland, but, California's got 4 and Texas has got, the second most populated state in the United States. And, that would make sense to go there as far as population. And like you said, there's an incline of baseball fans in Texas. It was primarily a football state, as many would know in the past. But and I'm with you on the Charlotte thing as well. I've always thought that should be a thought for expansion, but you keep hearing something about up in the Northwest, and I'm going, wait a minute, the population doesn't match up. So